Clicked it. All right, we're live. Hey guys, Frank with TITHE.LY, coming to you after the holiday weekend. Took a day off on Tuesday, and it's Wednesday, about 9 o'clock Pacific. Again, I'm coming to you from the home office out in San Diego, California, still sheltering in place. I got the kids downstairs homeschooling. But, you know, we've been talking to pastors and church leaders from, you know, all over the U.S. so far. And this morning I'm joined by Brandon Cole. Hey, Brandon, how's it going?
Good, man. It's good to be on.
Yes. And Brandon is the lead pastor at C3 Fort Worth out in Texas. So Brandon, why don't you give us a little bit of your story, like how you got into ministry, tell us a little bit about the church, and then we'll kind of jump into Church Online.
Yeah. How'd I get into ministry? Well, I grew up in a family that did a lot of it. My dad was a media guy, did a lot of stuff with big name stuff. And then my granddad started a men's ministry that went around the world. So my dad jumped in with that.
Okay.
And then that kind of happened. So I thought I was going to make movies. Yeah, I thought I was going to make movies with my life because that's what I saw my dad doing. And then everything switched. My parents planted a church the year that I left for college. I went to Oklahoma for a year, figured I need to get out of here. So I did. No offense to Oklahoma.
There's a big church out there.
Do what?
I said there's a big church out there.
Yeah, there's a few, and so I came home and somehow ended up preaching at youth and kind of building a youth ministry there, and I think I realized in the time was just like, I don't know that I ever had to like rip the roof off the house where God was like, you're gonna do this.
Yeah.
I don't know that any calling feels that way specifically. There's some that have that unique perspective, but I think a lot of people calling can be progressive. And so for me, it just kind of continued to grow and grow. And even in this season of pausing and doing things differently, there's been things that I'm reminded of that I'm going, okay, that's the next progression of this particular thing. And so, that's kind of how I got into it, man. I started as a youth pastor at 19 and then took over the church from my parents about 8-9 years ago when he was going to move more into full-time men's ministry. And then 2.5 years ago, we moved it into the city. So we were in the suburbs of Dallas, Fort Worth. And so 3 years ago, we moved it into the downtown area of Fort Worth.
Okay. Wow.
So that's where we're at now. Yeah, man.
You sort of took over the church, like mom and dad passed down the reins to your wife. What was that like?
Oh, I mean, I would say that relatively speaking, it was awesome. I think most times transitions like that happen, almost especially when it's father to son, it gets weird because you're going to dinner with the guy you just took over from. Right. But my parents have a unique ability to just really care about other people more than themselves. And they were just incredibly encouraging, always pushing us towards what we could be. But I also think there were some unique situation because we were going to dinner with people who were doing it one way and we were thinking about doing it a different way.
Right.
But we were always able to have those conversations. So I think the biggest challenge was the people, not because we lost a bunch of people. People were with it. They were like, yeah, let's do this. I credit a lot of that to my parents. But even if people are with you, they're in that kind of transition, they probably don't fully know you yet.
Right.
You know, when you have to put on a different hat. So
it's going to be different, right?
It's going to be different.
It's going to be different. And like people get comfortable with what they're used to and who they're used to hearing. Like just that whole dynamic shifts.
The language shifts. We did a lot of the same things, but it was a different people doing it. So it's different.
Yeah. Tell us about the church. So you guys are in the city now, like roughly what's the size, what's the makeup of the church, demographics, those kind of things?
Well, these days, I don't know what our church size is.
You're like 9 weeks ago, I could have told you, but now I have no idea.
If I go by Facebook numbers, my possible reach is 35,000. So I'm pretty sure that's where we're at. Like we've grown by 27 times.
All 35,000 are definitely there. For
For
the full hour and a half service. 100%.
It's like a new show on well, I don't want to be a new show that says, hey, we're going to reach 2 million people. No, that's no. But we would probably on a Sunday before all this happened, probably around 125, 150.
Yep.
And really in a season probably where we felt like more and more we were becoming the church that we had moved down to Fort Worth to become. It's a much bigger, longer transition than I ever thought it would be. I didn't realize we didn't move a church. We replanted a church. We moved 30 miles from where we had been meeting. So
it's pretty far.
Yeah. Now, good thing in Texas is everybody drives, kind of like like the Shacklefords will know. In Atlanta, you drive everywhere, but in Texas, we drive everywhere, and so it didn't kill everything by any stretch, but it definitely is a transition for us. So, but we're part of C3 movement, so C3 Global, Pastor Phil and Chris Pringle, and about 500, 600 churches all over the world, and very creative bent to it. And loud, fun. We love people. That's why it's hard for us to go back, because if we can't hug each other, then we don't see the point.
That's the thing, man. For a lot of churches, I mean, that's the same with us. It's like going back, it would just be weird to be in church and to have to stay 6 feet apart or have masks on, and I can't touch you. Like, it's going to be crazy. So let's jump into that. Like, so you've been online for 8+ weeks, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Tell us, were you online before? What's that experience been like for you?
No, we had no, it's funny. I had never, and I'm a bit of, I don't know if I just live contrarian. So I tend to push back. And people used to say I should be a lawyer. And I realized quickly that being a lawyer wasn't just arguing. I had to do studying. And so I stopped thinking about that one.
Lots of books.
A lot of books. I wasn't like, nah, if we can just yell at each other, I'm good. So then I was like, politics. No, anyways. Okay. So I think like for me, we had always pushed this phrase in our church, which was, we want to live beyond Sunday. I've always felt like, and this isn't a slight against the church, I think we're learning things, that for so much of what we produce, we do it for one hit. It's like we're just wanting that grand slam every time we come to the plate and hoping that everybody sees it. And I feel like, and I think we're realizing that right now, that actually is not going to cut it. That our creativity, and I think a lot of creatives feel this way, that if we're only using them for what we can do on a Sunday morning, then one, based on stats, only a quarter of our people are seeing it.
Yeah.
And two, we're severely limiting what's possible. And so for us, we had never really pushed online stuff. And it wasn't because we didn't think it could work. It's just we were focusing a lot of energy on producing content for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It had to live beyond Sunday.
Yeah.
But then this hit, and we were like, well, we got to do something. And
church has to happen somehow.
Yeah, exactly. So I think what we've probably realized is like there's absolutely value in it. We're not going to be able to quit it even when we start going back, because there's going to be people in our church who need it. And so we're kind of contemplating, what does that look like? Are we equipped to handle that? Do we have the right team for that? Do we have the right equipment for that? There's all kinds of questions, because producing a live service and producing an online service are two very different things.
Struggle. Because we're like the location of the church I go to, there's probably 225, 250 people, give or take. And I think the same thought has crossed my mind. I'm not sure, I'm a volunteer, right? But since I live in this world from a work perspective, like this stuff is on my mind. So I'm like, man, we're doing online. But then we go back at some point, we're doing church in the building. Doing both is going to be hard for a church our size, because it's all volunteers, and it's enough just to put on kind of the live service, like the in-person service and everything that goes on there. Doing a great online service as well. I'm not sure how we pull that one off, or if we should, or, like that kind of line of thinking is tough.
Yeah, no, I think that's where and that's what, we were mentioning before we jumped on live, is just like, what are the spaces we can create where someone does feel comfortable coming, but it's spread out enough and yet intimate enough? In other words, like, is there a number? Is there without realizing it, did the CDC give us a number? Did they say under 50 is actually a really good number, at least in the season, where we can go, if we can put 50 in a room for 100, 125, can we make sure people feel connected, feel part of it, experience worship? I think that's the part most people are missing, is the worship and the hugs, right? Like the handshakes and the worship. So I think that's the part people are missing. Yeah. So like, I don't know how we're going to pull it off yet. We're talking about it, and what do we need to buy? What do we need to purchase? And some of the things that the reason I kind of am taking this slowly is because I do want to make sure that we execute it well. I had a friend tell me he just wants to make sure that it's a small shift, not like a surprise, like it's all of a sudden very different than it was.
Right.
So even if we were to go to watch parties at home, maybe coming into a place and running it live together, just to give it a shot, just to see what it feels like, you know. So yeah, I think there's a lot of learning. I also think it's going to continue to emphasize for us that Sunday can't be the only thing. I think it's going to continue to remind us that Sundays. One of my favorite Bible teachers called Sundays the gathering of the good report. In other words, Sunday wasn't the day that we commenced ministry.
Right.
Sunday was the day that we celebrated the ministry that had already happened. And from your table to your street to your workplace to your family to your friends, what are you bringing into the room?
Right.
And I do think that's going to have to be something we get, and we're trying to go, how do we equip our people to become disciple makers, to be people who love their street, who love their neighborhood, who love the people on their street.
Yeah.
And when we gather back again, we're not gathering with a remnant of people, but we're actually gathering with the people that have become bigger because they brought people with them.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't change anything in terms of who we were supposed to be, right? As Christians in our communities, loving our neighbors, loving our families, loving the people on our street, right? Like none of that's any different, but for whatever reason, I don't know, you've seen all this stuff online, but like, you know, the church has been forced out of the building. It's not about the building. It's not about the Sunday gathering. It's about reaching people, and just loving our neighbors. And did anything change or shift, or when we come back, is anything different because of that? I mean, I think churches hopefully get much better doing the online church thing, because there's definitely, you know, benefit in
for sure
reaching people that are searching and making that a good experience that, you know, then connects them somehow with the actual people, which is where it's really powerful. But yeah, it's a big shift, getting back into the building.
Yeah, I definitely think the online stuff matters. I think it's a opportunity. The invitation from your couch to your computer is a much easier one than from, you know, your doorstep to my doorstep. So I fully believe that that's something that's going to be a tool for people to see what you're about, which again, like, emphasizes who you are. Like, if you genuinely care about people, if you genuinely, like, it's in your language, it's in the way you position yourself, it's in the way you, even the posts that you do on social media. Can people check you out and in that moment feel that you genuinely care about who they are by the things that you say, by the things that you put in your service? So I think online is a huge tool. A friend of mine said we're going to become hyper local churches with a global reach. And I 100% agree. We've seen people joining our services from all over the place, family, friends, you know, joining from Minnesota, joining from different places. And it's like,
never been easier, right? To get your family and friends to church. It's like, hey, you know, we're going live, share this on Facebook, share this on YouTube, tag a couple friends or your mom.
Yeah, the watch party tool on Facebook, or your mom. Yeah, we've honestly, last week we had a family. I didn't even realize this was happening, that they're all jumping on. We have, their daughter goes to our church, and the whole family's been jumping on our online service. And they've been chatting with each other. So like, to them, they feel like they're going to church together for the first time in a long time. Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. So what's like maybe we can jump back into kind of going back to church. How are you feeling, like, as a pastor leading a church? We're 8 or 9 weeks into this thing. What's the, like, how do you feel about, like, man, this has all been online, and, you know, do you need to get back in the building, see people? Are you cool with chilling? Are you getting fatigued in terms of doing church this way as a lead pastor?
Okay, so that there's layers to this, because
there's a lot to that question. You can go any route you want with it.
Let me say this. I was a creative. Again, I felt like I was going to be a video guy for a long time. And so some of this is actually enjoyable to me. I'm excited about it. The creative opportunity to do some things. Like we just posted a video where we had one of our ladies do a prayer over our church and put some city footage to it and put the text on. It was really cool. And it was like, I'm not sure we would have thought of that had we done it the other way. So there's some of that I'm enjoying, like stretching, pushing. The thing I'm missing the most is our teams. I know that sounds funny, but I feel like,
what are your teams? When you say teams, give context to that.
So I just mean like primarily our Sunday morning teams, from hospitality to kids to worship to production to welcome. So we're, seeing those people exercise gifting, seeing those people engage in building the local church, and you try to transition that to online and Zoom and all that stuff, but it can be fairly difficult to do that. So like, that's been a bit of a challenge. I will be honest with you. I've heard this from a couple of different pastor friends. I won't name names, but there is a level of like rest. And even though I feel like I've been working, I'm not busier. Like I'm not doing more things. I'm just doing a lot of things in a new way, and that can be draining. But I will say that there has also been something really refreshing about waking up every Sunday, because we pre-record. We don't do it live. Waking up with my kids, with my wife, and watching a service together. There's been something really cool about that. I don't want to do that forever. They don't always listen, but
getting the kids to do online church is tricky.
Yeah. So there's some of that's been challenging, but so that's interesting. Right. But I do think the church has survived more, difficult circumstances like this and worse than this. And so we are people that need to be together. The church will always gather. It will always come together. There will be a time where we're not wearing a mask and we're not checking people's temperatures and we're not doing all those things that will come, and we will get through this. And so, what I'm thinking about more than anything is not my Sunday gathering, because I feel like we will be able to get back to that and do it, not easily, but we will be able to adjust. The biggest question that's come out of this for me is, how are we measuring and how are we approaching regular, consistent discipleship? I heard one economist say that our economy is going to have to grow more resilient, not more efficient. So less efficient, more resilient. And I feel like in some ways that's the way I'm approaching the season as a church. Not how do we become more efficient at what we do, but how do we become more resilient in who we are? And I think that includes Sundays. I don't think it needs to be less gathering on a Sunday. I just think it needs to be more of these other things for it to be everything that's meant to be. And so I think that's the part I'm wrestling with. Getting back to Sundays, pulling 125 people together to set up, tear down, do all the stuff, but also not lose the opportunity we have to really disciple people at a level that we haven't in the past.
Are you in that vein, are you learning things about using technology for discipleship and using technology for building community and building family? Is that something that you're going to carry into next year?
Right? I'm hoping, for sure. I'm hoping we learn lessons. I'm hoping we learn how to use technology for sure. I think, like we had last Wednesday, I had a friend of ours, pastor in Long Island, Phil Beekler is one of my favorite Bible teachers. He is just easy to listen to. And we pulled him in on a Zoom call and invited people to jump on. I think we had about 20 people. It was a Wednesday night. About 20 people. And he just he expanded on this topic of how to read the Bible for all it's worth. And it had been a series that he had taught. And I got done with it and I said, man, it took an hour. He jumped on 5 minutes before, was done and went to eat dinner with his family. I went and hang out with my family, and it was easy. It was amazing. Like seeing people posting about how they're reading their Bible now and the things that they're learning. And it's like, I didn't have to fly anybody. I didn't have to none of that. Now, granted, I would have loved to have him here, but so there's some of that kind of stuff. And I've also realized that social media isn't a strategy, it's a tool. And I think a lot of people were going, oh, well, we just have to be on social media. That's not really it. I'm finding it. And so we were putting a lot of pressure on ourselves to post a bunch of stuff, to get a bunch of stuff out. And it's like, no, hold on. What's the strategy? And for us, our heart has always been about featuring the city. We want the city to know that our church is for them. So we're working on a thing right now called Fort Worth Fridays that is just going to be highlighting businesses, entrepreneurs, creatives in our city.
Yeah, that's cool.
And we're not putting any weird bent on it. We're not going, and now here's how you can be a part of C3. No, it's just, here's who's in our city, and here's who we're loving, and here's who we care about. But it's got to be strategic. So we've got to make decisions there. And the strategy helps you, takes the pressure off you feeling like you got to post 12 things every single day and catch up with that dude who's doing it, who has a staff to do it or whatever.
Right.
I also think for us, like the online stuff, I've done for a long time, done a thing called Run It Back, which is my 6-minute recap of a Sunday. And it's me on a GoPro with my kids in the background yelling and screaming outside, riding a dirt bike or a bike or whatever. And I'm just talking into the camera, and we cut it up, and I do all the editing for it. And the thing that we have to realize as a church is that authenticity is going to win every time. And most YouTube guys that have gotten famous did it with a single camera that was cheap and inexpensive.
They're just like holding their iPhone or holding like a small, like mirrorless these days, and they're just walking around, or a GoPro, right? Like, they just go for it.
And so like, I think that's it. Like, why do we, everything was so produced? And it's like, no, you can do some produced things. Like, don't get bad at doing things, but like, what are the things you can do? And that's where the Instagram Live and some of those things have come up. So we're definitely using that. And it's like, for me, there's part of this, like I just talked with our video guy, and we're like, hey, would you want to record the next one outside, like with the city in the background? And I was like, well, Carl Lentz did it, so yes. Like, no, I think it would be awesome. I think it'd be great. It fit in what we're talking about, and with what's happened yesterday and what happened a couple of weeks ago. Like, I think it'd be good to talk about our city and talk about the issues that our city is facing. And yeah, it'd be really, really cool to do some of those things. And I'm going to miss the opportunity to preach with Fort Worth in the background when we go back into a building.
Right.
So I think my point is that, like, the Sunday gathering probably doesn't have to be as amazing as we think it has to be if during the week we are creating resilient people and we are creating community. Because what people are missing, and I hate to tell this to all the preachers, what people are missing is maybe not your amazing exegesis of the scripture, which it possibly could be. What people are missing is the hugs, the community, and the worship, the lifting of hands to the Lord, and lifting and reaching hands to one another. That is what people are missing. That's always the thing mentioned, and every time they tell it to me, my heart breaks a little bit. But
and I think that's what people are expecting when they go back. And I think I started hearing it last week as things are kind of opening and people are just getting fed up with online in a lot of ways. Like, they want to go back. Both the church leaders, the pastors and church leaders, but also the people. I was talking to Larry Osborne from North Coast Church.
One of my favorites, man. That guy's brilliant.
Yeah, he's brilliant. And he was the first one I had heard it from. I'm sure it was being talked about prior to my hearing it, but he's like, look, you shouldn't go back until the experience is as good as what people expect.
Right.
And I was like, oh, that's a great point. But then you balance that against the fact that people just want to go back. And I interviewed other guys that same week that were like, we're coming back this Sunday. Like, the last Sunday, they went back. 2 of the guys I interviewed, 2 of the pastors I interviewed went back, and they're like, we're going back. We just need to get back. We're going to social distance, and we're going to have this service and that. Like, they were sorting it out. Smaller churches. So it's like I've seen this smaller church way of going back versus the big church, and kind of it's different in same
very much
different, and some people are thinking about it differently. And I think you're totally right. People want to get back to seeing their friends, seeing their church family, being together, worshiping, like, the kids running around. They're like, I'm missing all that, right? We missed that moment. But how do you kind of get back to that moment, and when can it be the same? That's still the part that I think is undefined for all of us.
I don't think people know exactly what it's going to look like. And I probably sit in the middle somewhere on that, because I think on one hand, it's like, does it need to be the same? Like, does it need to be what it was? Or have we learned things about ourselves that, like, we go, oh, you know what? Some of this I need to be getting in a different way, or I think there's something about coming back that could be more stripped down, more raw, more real. And not, I've always told people in our church, and I hope I'm like, I'm not, I love gathering with people. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
One of the things I've always told my church is one of the challenges for you as a Christian in our culture is that on Tuesday afternoon, when you're dealing with a major issue in your family or dealing with a major issue in your workplace, the band can't show up.
Right. Yeah.
And I can't squash the issue for you. Like I can't show up and say some great one-liner. And because I say great one-liner, I'm sure. So I can't show up and
so many of them in this episode.
So,
I mean, we're gonna grab. We've got at least 50.
Oh, Joe, no, I dug for a compliment and got it. Oh man, brilliant. But I think in some ways, like the one-liners, here's what I honestly think. When this all hit and people had to stay home and people were losing jobs and people were the one-liners, and my grandfather was the king of, he had an entire book of one-liners that sold like crazy. I mean, I'm telling, it's not like it's in our blood, but one-liners don't always do enough for your faith. Like they don't, like it's, now if it's a verse, cool. But like, I think what I like through all of this, I'm going, what can we do that doesn't require all the extra stuff, even if we have it?
Right.
And how can I still want it. Like, listen, the latest album that comes out with worship on it, you ask my wife, I think she's on right now. I'm jumping around the house. I'm screaming and shouting and my kids are going, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So I'm in on it. Like I love it. If I wasn't a pastor, I'd be a worship leader, which is what every pastor says. But I do wonder what it looks like for us to be really honest about what we're building our faith on, to be really honest about what we deem as necessary, and to allow the things that need to be extra be extra, and really, and I think when you get honest about what you really, really need, you can begin to build on what you want. And you know, it's the whole idea that spontaneity is built out of preparedness. The more prepared I am, the more spontaneous I can be. The more I know how to get to that destination and I've mapped it out, the better I can go, oh, but what about this? Let's stop here real quick, and let's stop here real quick. And so I think the more prepared I am, the better I'll be at. In fact, like right now, my battery's about to die, and so I have to move. So like that's being prepared, you know? So like I'm going to move over here and plug in.
It's authentic.
It's authentic and real.
Yeah. As you're talking, I mean, I'm just thinking, and we can wrap it here pretty quick, but you know, at the end of the day, the Bible's pretty clear about, you know, one another relationships and how we live as Christians in that kind of community, not just the Sunday gatherings, you know, not just the church functions, but actually, you know, living with your brothers and sisters and having each other in our lives and encouraging one another and, you know, helping one another, like teaching, rebuking, training, all the things that are happening in the one another relationships is what we all need. Right. And just showing.
I've been really good at the rebuking part. I've been trying to really own that piece of it for sure.
Got that one first and working on the other one. We're gentleness.
Yeah.
But no, this has been great, man. Where can you know, any sort of closing thoughts, and also where can people go to check you guys out, kind of what you're doing online? I
mean, everything for us is C3 Fort Worth. I really appreciate you letting me jump on. I don't know how you got my name and all that stuff. No, I'm joking. We love TITHE.LY, by the way. We use it regularly. We think what you guys are doing is great. I know several of the guys that are part of the team, and I call them friends, and I'm super thankful for them. So I appreciate you letting me jump on.
Like, how long you guys been on TITHE.LY?
Oh man, I think we made the switch a year and a half ago, maybe. Maybe a little bit more.
I didn't get a chance to check before this. I usually try to check, but yeah, no, I was hopping on the website, and
it's been great for us.
Yeah, we're great. How has giving been in this season for you? Like, man,
surprisingly, we've been really good. And what's interesting with the benefit of being a load in, load out is we've not been charged for our venue either.
Right.
So like on top of our giving staying regular, in fact, in February, March, it was higher. And part of April was higher than normal. So we've been really, really blessed in that. Our church has really stepped up. We also did something, and I don't know if this helped our giving. Heck, it might have hurt our giving. We did something called For the Streets, and every week we chose a different nonprofit or business in our city that we were going to support financially, because we couldn't take 20 volunteers anywhere. So we're like, okay, well, how do we help? So we started giving. So we raised, I think, $5,000 in the month of April towards nonprofits. In fact, today I think 100, 200 burritos were delivered to the police department. But what I think it did, whether or not it increased our giving, what it absolutely did was reminded people about who we are and what we're about. And that eventually is going to impact our giving.
And that wasn't giving to support the like actual church. It was passed through, help the community, but the church participated. I love that kind of stuff where you're supporting local nonprofits or local businesses, or like giving your church, the people a chance to kind of do that, through you in a sense, and they get to participate. And I think that's super cool. I talked to another church in Fresno, Josh Ermler, and they're like delivering pizzas to people, like the church is funding it and they're getting pizzas and showing up on the street and passing them out. And like,
I'm totally going to steal that idea. I'm definitely doing that.
Yeah,
pizza's my favorite food.
They're partnering with a local pizza shop, right? And like buying a bunch of pizzas and then just giving them away to the community. So super cool.
And that was our thought, like, hey, how do we partner? So we bought a bunch of burritos from a place that had to switch their business plan and said, we'll buy a bunch. And then we bought a bunch of coffee. So we supported a local business while at the same time, honoring some people. So all of our stuff, everything's C3 Fort Worth, c3fortworth.com, C3 Fort Worth on Instagram, C3 Fort Worth on Twitter and Facebook. So you can find us there. And I would just encourage people, man. I think we are in a moment where some of the dreams and thoughts that you've had in your head for a long time and in your heart for a long time, you should go for. Try them, give them a shot, experiment. I've kind of said it like this. When I had my little boy was 2, he had a bit of a mullet. I loved it. I thought it was amazing. And it was only allowed at 2. Like if he was 12 and had that, he would get beat up and made fun of. And so like, we are in that season. We are in that you are 2 and you can have a mullet kind of moment where you can try things and no one's going to hold it against you. And for us, the thing that has allowed me to be free about like, hey, I'm in Texas, but I may not open as quickly as everybody else is. In Exodus 40, the very end of it, it says that he moved, that when the cloud lifted, the people moved. And in every stage of the journey, in other words, that they didn't make it to the promised land on their first go. And that they didn't move because the weather permitted. They didn't move because everything worked out. They moved because the cloud lifted. And so for us, it was when God moves, we move. And we're not going to rush it. We're not going to hurry. There's no need to be in a hurry. The church will get through this. We will do more than survive. I fully believe that. I believe that we are set up for revival and awakening 100%. Revival always starts with a remnant. So the people who are left with you, man, lean in and go for it. But we've just been like, hey, what is God? Where's the cloud for us? And is he lifted yet? And is it time to move? And can we go in stages and be okay with that? And I think there's some really unique, beautiful, powerful things that are going to happen in this season if pastors and teams will be willing to embrace that wild thought in the back of their mind that says, what if we tried this?
Love that.
What if you tried it? It doesn't mean that in 6 months you can't do exactly what you always used to do.
Right.
But for now, grow the mullet, give it a shot. Like, why not?
Try the line we're going to use right there.
Use it. Grow the mullet. What's your mullet? Find your mullet, grow it. I feel a book coming on.
Brandon, awesome, man. Super fun chatting with you. Thanks for spending a half an hour with us and, sharing your thoughts, sharing your journey. I think church leaders, just listening to others and, you pick up an idea, you pick up a thought, you get some inspiration, you feel connected to like other people are going through what I'm going through. And that's really the point of like doing these interviews is just chatting and letting church leaders connect with others. So appreciate you, man. Appreciate your time.
Very, very much appreciate it, man. I appreciate you letting me talk about random stuff. But no, I really do. I appreciate what you guys are doing and appreciate getting to be a part of it for sure.
Yeah, I love it. If you're joining us online, whether you're watching live or you'll probably, most people see the recording, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Give it a like, give us a comment. If you have any questions, ask them here. We'll get Brandon to come in the comments, hopefully, and answer anything you guys ask. And we'll be back another day. I'm not sure if we'll be back tomorrow or not, but you'll see us on Facebook or YouTube. Appreciate you guys. Have a good one.
Awesome. Thanks, man.